So we saw that לפי ההמשך of the Biur B'Shittas Baramak בעניין Ein Sof, but not only Ein Sof Pashtusei, but Ein Sof Shlilas Kol HaToyarim. We saw that means Afila the Bligvo, Shlilas HaBligvo, Shlilas HaShlilo, V'Achiyu Gam Yachad, meaning that the Eibishter is beyond any possible Toyah or Dora that would in any way be Magdir in any form of Hagdora, even in the Hagdora of Bligvu. So that's a gewaldige chiddush. So we come to a new concept at Inyan van Ein Sof, well, that's the Biur Hasheni, the Biur HaBeis in the Inyan van Ein Sof. And we saw the Kol Zeinu Shayach Rak B'Pchinas Ha'atzmus Mamish, שמציוסי מעצמי שהוא הנמצא האמיתי שאינו בבחינת מציאס נמצא. The shleimus of the Atzmus is, the Alter Rebbe brings it, we'll soon quote it again shortly, in the famous Igeras HaKodesh chapter 20, in Igeras HaKodesh, Betanya, what the shleimus of the Atzmus is, was Metziusei mi Atzmusei, that his Metzius is purely from his own self, and mitzad his own self. That's a nimto ha'amiti she'einu b'bchinas Metzius nimto. Because the Klal has it that anything which is a Metzius, anything which is a existing and found entity, it's shy to say about that we can indicate it and as it were find it, then that's indicative that it began and it's talui be'ezhu dova agoyim l'metziyazu, and that's what the Alter Rebbe quotes in Tanya in Perek Kov Tes, that he said that everything which is a nimtzo must have some eza dova she mamtzi or oisa oisai. It's not shayah. Ein dovar oisa es atzma. Therefore, that's the word metziyos, a dover to be found, a dover which came into being. Aber der Eibishter mitzad amitias ha'atzmas, he's not in a bechina von a metzias nimtzo, ela adrabe, he is the amitias hametzius, most metzius is from his own self. And therefore, that's impossible to be mataya that in any form of descriptive term. And therefore, it's shlilas kol ha-toyarim, the negation of all possible toyarim. Retayna leima shehu nimtza loy b'bchinas metzius, b'zeh davke shayach leima amiti es inyan ein sof. It's something that's beyond the whole concept of a being, because a being means that it was made into a being. No, he's the being in the sense of a being mitzad his own being. Then that is the amitius, a concept of Ein Sof. So come to that we've gone very high into the musig of Ein Sof, and to a certain extent we've gone beyond the normal pashtas, what you might call pirush in the word Ein Sof, which means without end. When you say Ein Sof, in Lashon Kodesh, you mean no end or without end. So that's more applicable to the first Biur, Ein Sof lehis pashtusei, the inyan ein end, no finish and no end in the presence of his Metzias, as we touched it, because we can't say his pashtus on the Atzma. However, the new Pirush is that Ein Sof is an expression meaning that there's no descriptive terminology can be used for him. In other words, there's nothing which could in any way define and thereby, as it were, limit his Metzias. And therefore, the new touch in Ein Sof means the idea of shlila of any possible descriptive or thereby definitive term. And once you go into a definitive term, then the question is, how does that become defined, and what makes its definition, where did it derive from? Now, Mamira, you're already into some form of limitational Hagdora. Mashenkin in the Eibishter. And what is the secret to that? That he is Metziusei Miat Musei, and therefore he's like the Rambam calls him Amitis Himatrooi, the genuine state of being. Ubezeh, and we saw in brackets, Ubezeh Yumtak Amke Masher Omru B'Mokim Acher She'enu Shayab Loima B'Ei Ein Seif B'Fi She'en Latayre. He said, according to this, we'll also be able to avoid a kasha which occurs mitzad what is mavur b'mokim acher, meaning in other sforim, that you can't call the Eibishter, meaning atzmusa, you can't call him Ein Seif, because Ein Seif is a form of a description. When you say Ein Seif, like we just saw, Bli Gvul, Ein Seif means the concept of no end, so we just saw that Bli Gvul itself is a description. Bli Gvul is a form of a description. However, that's all because they're taking the Indian of Ein Seif and its simple muvan, as I just pointed out. The simple muvan is takedah. We said according to this, what we've just touched in the Indian of Ein Seif, Yum Tak, it will become literally sweetened or bettered, or made ois kasha from the word sweet, literally Yum Tak, it'll be made better and it'll avoid the kasha. The Adara, because of on the contrary, Shem Ein Seif Kanal Hu Inyan Shlilas Kol HaToyarim Legamre. In other words, in other words, the answer is that according to that pure Ein Seif, then Henachanami. You can't call him Atzmus Ein Seif, because the normal Taishat Ein Seif means without end, and that's already a form of a Hagdorah. He's saying he has no end. Yeah, but he's limited in not having any end, as it were. That itself is a form of a limitation. That's what they say. You can't be mataya him in anything. But if we're teaching that the word Ein Seif, or the expression Ein Seif, on the contrary, is exactly the opposite of all of those inyonim. No, it's the shlila of all possible toyarim. Then Ein Seif doesn't mean that he has no end to his special, to his being. On the contrary, that's already one of the limitations that the word Ein Seif cancels. Yeah. So come to is that it's called a peladik understanding in the concept of the word, the phrase Ein Seif. If we'll say that was the kavanah of the Ramak, then come to is that he's taking a very remarkable stand, but again, as we'll see, it even improves as we go along in this particular passage. Avo b'bchinas ha'oyer, v'chol ma'asher ne'atzal mimenu einu shayach lo'ima b'bchinas Ein Seif, b'bchinas u'madreges ha'amitis shebazeh kanal. Rach li yesh ha'oyer u'me'ein hamoyer, yesh boi koyach hamoyer. So, now we come to the very important, what you might call kvetch, Lefi the Shitta from Siddur Chabad. There was the Rebbe, if we take over the concept of oyer, what oyer is the light, the ha'ora which was meir from the atzmas, right from the beginning. He said in that inyan which we describe as oyer, what Ne'atzal is already a lower madrega, that once we've already got the then we go down into madregas in the and we make what's called Ne'atzalim, what that's already referring to, Ak, and the other Oilams, particularly Atzilus. Einu shayach lo'ima b'chinas Ein Seif. It's not shayach to say in them Ein Seif b'china u'madrega ha'amitiyah shebazeh kanal. In the genuine and truthful concept that we just revealed in Ein Seif, you can't say. However, you can say in the oyer that it's Ein Seif lishpash tusi. For that you certainly can say, and we can even say in Olam HaAtzilas, it's well known that even the spirits in Olam HaAtzilas are called Ein Seif lishpash tusam. And the whole gather of Gvul that there is in the spheres of Atzilas is in the noise and the teichen of what they are, that they differ one from the other mitzad what the oyer is megale, and that is alidei the kelim. But the etzem his pashtas ba'amshocha of the Esser spheres is adein Azad Ein Sof. Therefore, according to that idea, both the oil, which is the original oil, which was Meir from the Atzmas, and what you might call the Tzimtzumim, and the developments of that oil, which are called Ne'atzolim, you can't call them Ein Sof in the way we just described. You can't say that they are Mushlolim Mikola Toyarim. However, you can say they are Ein Sof Lizpash Stuso. Genau. Rach liyosha oyer hu mi ein hamoya yesh boi koyach hamoya. However, he said the Alter Rebbe is mechadish, as we're going to see now as we go along, that what we can say about the oyer is Einoch Hanami, we can't say that it's shlilas kol atoyarim in the way that we describe the new biur in Ein Sof. However, we can say that the oyer has in itself the koyach hamoyer. And where does it gain that koyach hamoyer? From the fact that it's mi'ein hamoyer. Now it's an interesting fact that throughout this whole drush, which is one of the main central drushim in Chassidus Chabad, that explains all these things we're just discussing here, and he quotes freely from that Igeras of the Alter Rebbe in chapter 20 in Igeras HaKodesh. He's over there, the Alter Rebbe uses the expression that the oil is ke'ein hamoyer with a kaf, not with a mem. And it's interesting here, in most of the passages in this particular Maimah and in the other Maimorim in the Zemsha, and also in different places from the Rabbeim, we find they quote the Alter Rebbe saying that the oil is me'ein hamoyer with a mem. But the original Lashon there in Tanya is with a kaf, not with a mem. Ke'ein hamoyer. So, Yeishlis Boinen Lama Zeh. This particular moment I'm not prepared to go into it, what would be the diuk in saying me'ein instead of ke'ein. For the intelligent reader and the inquiring studier, etc., if he happens to look it up over there in Tanya, chapter Kaf, then he will see that the Lashon is ke'ein and not me'ein. However, suffice it to say that we've already touched on numerous occasions that the word mi'ein or ke'ein, as it's written over there, indicates that the entity which you're describing, legabi, its mokeh or its deriving point, is me'ein or ke'ein, in the sense that it partakes in itself certain inyonim ikriyim which are to be found in the. And why do I say ikriyim? Because they are important in the sense that there has to be a certain comparability or similarity, and that's what the idiom for ke'ein implies. In other words, not comparable or similar in the ultimate sense, but having in itself certain important inyonim which to a certain limited extent or component or within certain realms cause me to say that they're comparable or they carry in themselves similar inyonim, and that's the inyan of ke'ein and mi'ein. And we pointed out the famous, I always bring an example of from the famous Lashon of the Zmiris, of the Payatan, in the famous Zmira, which is brought in some Sidurim on Shabbos, where it says that Ma'ein Oilam Habo Yom Shabbos Manucha, that the Yom Shabbos Manucha is Me'ein Oilam Habo. So nobody would say that Shabbos is Mamish Oilam Habo. We didn't get to that yet, because we always say at the end of benching, Harachamonu Yan Chileinu Leyom Shekule Shabbos Manucha L'Chai Yelamim. In other words, we didn't yet reach the Inyan from Oilam Habua. Even though the Rambam says that Olam Habo is afilu nimtza b'zeho Olam, and that's a pshat Olam Habo, it's just around the corner. V'chulu, b'li lekanish l'kol dikdukim, in that the Shabbos has in itself certain inyonim which are there in Olam Habo. Dahainu, the Indian of complete withdrawal and complete, how would you call it, avshota for any dover hamaval bill, like it's put in the Mechilta, that you have to see on that day the Kol Malachtichol, a Suya, that you have no Indian of Malacha, and all your Shaykhs Lazeho Ilam has already been completed. You have alle Minnesot Peledike Inyanim, which are brought also B'derech HaPnimius when I get to Shabbat. Who's this?
Some kids.
Huh?
Some kids.
Huh?
Not from here.
Nation?
They're not from here. They're from.
Therefore, there are certain inyanim which are mamish mi'ein olam habo. Although nobody would suggest that Shabbos is mamish olam habo. And like we see in the bench, we ask for the madrega from olam habo, which are rachamanu yan cheleinu lezeh. Is assuming we haven't yet come to a meteor's olam habo. But yet, nonetheless, it takes in itself and has in itself certain essential similarities to the Indian without being that Indian itself. And that's the concept of a Dora which is called Ke'ain, or in our expression here, Me'ain Mutamim. That's the whole concept. So there was the Indian from the Oyer, which was Meir from the Atzmas, and then later even the Netzolim Mia Oyer there, Be'ika, they have in themselves a certain similarity and a certain, what you might call a me'ain of the Atzmas Mamish. However, Cholila to say that they are the Atzmas, no, Bika the Hameya, the Hameya, Rishon, Min Atzmas, or that's called Ke'ain or Me'ain Amorah, but Cholila to say that it is the Morah, or that it's anything comparable to the Shleimus HaMorah. And therefore the Alter Rebbe brings in the Likutei Torah in the Drushim from Shir HaShirim in one place, and also in the Drushim for Rosh Hashanah. The Alter Rebbe brings over there that the famous expression that Lo Yizu Kol Ha'atzmas Klal Ma She'o'er Nimtza Mimenu. In other words, that what the oil comes from the Atzmas, it doesn't Klal Lo Inyan Atzmas Klal. It's only a Ha'orah Bilvad B'derech Rochei Heder Ko Amitius Shaykhs to the Atzmas. And yet nonetheless we say that in that Ha'orah, albeit it's Klal not Be'erah to the Atzmas, Yesh B'zeh Inyonim Musuyomim which are Ikarim in the Atzmas. And remember, it's like almost two contrasts in Benoisa Echor. It's like having, in a way, the old expression has it, having your cake and eating it too. In other words, at Mitzad Echor, we say it's Klal, not Begeder HaAtzmas. Mitzad Hasheni, we say Yesh B'zeh Inyonim Ikarim Shel HaAtzmas. And that's what he's about to say here, that the Uyar has in itself. Yesh boy koyach hamoer. What is the touch koyach hamoer? We're going to see that is one of the essential abilities, koyach being used here in the sense of that what he can do. In other words, his capacity, the koyach of the etzem moer, and the etzem moer means the atzmas. Well, that's going to be in the oil, even though the oil is only a ha'orah bilvad mimeno. Akameshikosu bigaras hakodesh dibur ha'matzchei v'chayei ochad. Sheyesh boi gam koyach zeh, that the oil has got in itself even this particular koyach, the matziusei miatz musei mitzad adveikis bim koiroi u'mi'ein makoiroi. Vayamashkosu b'tiba maschu b'yem simchaschem u'mamoya deichem. Well, that's in the famous hymn of Tov Reis Nun Vov. That's about 10 years earlier than this particular hymn. Over there, in that hymn, the Rebbe Rashab talks about this Indian Bariches. But here's a tremendous chiddush that the Rebbe said that one of the inyonim are the koyach ha'atzmas that go over into the ha'orah bovad, which is the oyer, is mitziusei mi'atz musay. Now that's a gewaldige chiddush, and he said that is mitzad the Devekis Bihamoya. In other words, we've got two expressions now. We say that Me'ein Hamoya, and now we say in infant Devekis in the Moya. Now we have to say that what the oil is dovuk in the Moya, it's cloven to the Moya, or that gufa is the rotzen of the Moya. Not that that had to be, and not that that's mukhrach. Or this gufa is the rotzen of the Eibishter, that there should be such a kesher between him and the oil. Over Sof, since he wanted it that way, as it were, Kaviyochel, that the oil should be dovuk, boy, and therefore, mitzad the devekis, you get the inyan of me'ein. In other words, that the me'ein is what you might call a toitzoah, or a mesuvav. It's something that comes out from the concept of devekis be'amoya. And in the Moshel HaGashmi, for the inyan from oya with moya, we see that beli devekis in the moya, then there's no matzias of the oya klal or klal. Because if something interrupts, for example, between the moya hashemesh and the oya, ameya mimeno, then on the other side of the interruption, there's no oya. It just doesn't exist, klal or klal, because the whole inyan of the oya is only, in other words, what you might call the whole matzias of the oya. Not just its koiches, but the whole matzias of the oya is only the devekis in the moya. Mitzad the fact that definitional wise, oil can't be without devekis. Or that devekis has in itself what you might call a resultant, a thing that comes out of it. Dahainu, that devekis causes this inyan from ein, or kilshena, or the Alter Rebbe, or the kiyain. That causes a chidish otzum, that the oil becomes like the moya, in the sense that just like he is Metziusei Mi'atzmosei, so is the oil also, that in that madrega, how it is immediately, prior to the tzimtzum, the oil hameya Mi'atzmos is also Metziusei Mi'atzmosei. Well, this is a chidish nifla. But if you look in the Lashon over there in Tanya, in the Geras HaKodesh, then you see that Razeh is Mavuah. Razeh state that the Alter Rebbe begins by saying that the Hisavas is min ha'oyer, shehu ke'ein ha'moyer. Razeh state nicht me'ein, or ke'ein ha'moyer. And he goes on to say that the moyer is Metziusei Matzmusei, she'ein lo siba v'ila akod men lo yizborach, hu levadi b'koicha v'yachol te lahavis es ha'yesh me'efes, v'ayin v'efes ha'muchlat. And he said, v'yesh nibra zeh, misava alitei ha'oyer, comes dafke through the inyan of the oyer, not the atzmos, but dafke through the inyan from the oyer. Is the semen that in the oyer is nimtze kol ha'koyach hazeh shel Metziusei Mi'atzmosei. That's what he said, that the atzmos is Metziusei Mi'atzmosei. Dahainu, what the Rebbe is trying to say, that the one and only thing that could possibly bring about Yesh Mi Ayin is something what in itself is Metziusei Mi'atzmosei. In other words, the only atzmos ain't saved. Only the Eibishter can possibly, who be'atzmosei, he can bring about the yesh me'ayin v'efes ha'muchlat, because only he is Metziusei Mi'atzmosei. In other words, that any other thing which is not ba'evil, because that could not possibly bring about yesh min ha'ayin. Only something that is mamish in that oiven, that it's not tolui b'shum dover. Loi b'shum ila v'siba akodemus lo is borach, or that has the ability to bring about the yesh min ha'ayin. In Nimtzah, what is the koyah to bring about yesh mi ayin? The etzem shleimus ha'atzmus, the Metziusei Mi'atzmosei. That's what gives the power to bring about yesh mi ayin. Amamela, if he says what he does, that his harvest comes through the medium of the oyer, because he doesn't want to say that it comes through the atzmus mamish for all sorts of reasons. With ein kana mochim l'hikonis l'zeh, he doesn't want to say that comes from the atzmus, it comes from the oyer. Then it follows that the oyer hasn't told the inyan from Metziusei Mi'atzmosei, because only the koyach of Metziusei Mi'atzmosei can bring about the inyan Adeyesh min ha'ayin. If the oil must have in itself that koya of the atzmas, or that ability, or that shleimus of the atzmas, mitziyosei mi'at shmosei. As he stated dort in the Yom Simchaskim, the famous Maimon dort in Reish Nun. Well, also in the second chelik, right near the end of the second chelik of Ayin Beis, in the Hemshech Ayin Beis, there's also a big arichas from the Rebbe over there about that. Follows if he said that you got an amazing thing, that you got a oil which is only a dover ha'olam. The oil is the thing with the average to produce it. It's not him, and it's only a ha'or, a bill. But nonetheless, it has in itself the eat from mitziyosei mi'at shmos. Which, because that's what he wants. Azay will kachurot. Amamelet vibal is kachurot in ayin, which is only the oil. Ha'or bilvad she'ein is a kol erech al atzmos. Dafki, it's got until that unbelievable koyach of the atzmos itself. Shemitziyusei mi'at shmosei, and that's mitzad what we call the devekis in the moya, because that's the way he wanted that it should be dovuk in him ad kedikach, that it carries over that particular inyan. And that's what you'll find in certain Drushi Chassidus, that it's written that the oyer, which is meir from the atzmas, has what we call a kiyum atzmi. What kiyum atzmi means, its ability to continue itself, its being is from its own self. In other words, its continued state is from its own self, not from anything else. And the unbelievable chiddush here is that the oyer is talui b'mashu acher, and yet now in that oyer is meir that inyan which is not taught b'shum dover. That's a pili niflo she'ein kamoyu. Dafki in a dover which is only mesurav mimenu, and it's only inyan ha'orah b'vad. Yesh l'zeh tchila v'mitzad atzma, yesh l'zeh tichlo. Mitzad atzma. In that dafki mitzad ritzoni is baruch, in them is to be found the koyach ha'oin, the oin say. And remember, that's what the Alter Rebbe writes over there in Tanya. If you look carefully, you'll see that is the unbelievable chiddush, the unbelievable biur state taught in Tanya. Domani she'ein shum mokir v'shum sefer that writes it exactly that way. The Alter Rebbe does. It's from the Pilois Alei Adomis, the Eis Davak Hazeh. Well, if he's there, come to it, the Ramak would be masking with that. The Ramak would say, that there can be a dover, which is Misav Mimenu, comes from Misuv Mimenu, which has got in itself similarities to him, but not that it has the mitzad atzmei. It itself is a dover sheyesh lo tchila, or mamel yesh lo tichlo. Mitzad etzem atzmosei. But he wants it should be in it that power. But it itself, mitzad atzmei, doesn't have it. Who has that power? Only the Eibusha himself. It's like we said that you're having your cake and eating it too. He said, גם כוח זה דמציוסי מעצמוסי, מצד הדבקס במקורוי ומיין ממקורוי. And if you look up in that Maimon, Mayadeihem, is these masber over there, but two of time, and not arichas gedoyle. It's really approachable, don't in the Hemshech, and in the Ayin Beis, it's in the middle of a whole series of other, you can sort of use your spotlight to pick it up over there, but it's there. It's definitely there. So he says, Ulafizeh, Efshar, it's possible, Shaya boy, Gam came B'chinas Ein Tzevka. No. He said, therefore it's possible to say that in the oil also the infant ain't safe. But not that the oil's got to be tzad atzmei. It's only shayach. It's possible to say in the oil the infant ain't safe. But not mitzad atzmei. That's he's going to point out again a little bit further along, another few lines along. V'lochem, Hishavas hanivroim mi'ayin liyesh, hu al yidei ha'oir, but it is bekoyach oin safe. It's through the oil, but not chas v'sholim in the oil mitzad atzmei. No, because the Eibusha put his koyach oin safe in the oil, and he put it in that way that he made himself mitziyusei mi'at Musay appear in the oil. And mamela, because of that, the oil can be mahava fil yesh me ayin. V'hainu mipchinas oer asayveiv kolalmin. Now when we say sayveiv kolalmin, we mean the way how he is muvdal mikol ha-spheres v'kol ha'olamets. Umavur b'makimacha hatam. I'm sorry. Umavur b'makimacha hatam she'ef shaliyes isavas hayesh mipchinas mamale kolalmin. I look at it in a way, if we wanted to make everything masuda and talk about everything in a more ordered fashion, then it would be comfortable to say that the Yisava should be mamale kol almin, because mamale kol almin is already what's come down, but they're tzimtzum, they are close to the element. So you go to the elements how they are in Atzilas, and then you go down through the spheres. And everybody agrees that there's Zillah V'ol in the spheres Atzmon, and you go down through that, and you come to Malchut, and then you say, oh yes, from there on we have, Olam is Bria Tiravasiya, and they would be Nivra Alidei this Koyat, which we call Mamalei Kol Almin. So the Rebbe says, that would be very comfortable, mitad certain spotters, to say that, but we can't say that. We can only say that the Yisavas Yesh Mi'ayin comes from that which is completely beyond the Mamale, the Hainu, the Inyafan, Seivev. And he says, for what? Seivev meaning the how it is, Mamish, Meir from the Moya. So he says, Favus, Omavur B'mokim Acher Hatam, She'ev Shal Yesh Yisavas Mi'prinas Lefi, Shemamale Kol Aminu Prinas Gvul, Umugda begeder agbola ruchniats. He said the Inyan from Eram Mamale Kolamin is already undergone what you might call limit, gvul, but it's also undergone mugda begeder hagdore or agbola of ruchnias. It's already been, as it were, fenced and defined in a certain a conceptual state, which is what we call spirituality. In other words, something which is mudal from the idea of a physical stuff, which is gashmiya. V'yef shaliyes mizeh hisavas hagashmiyas. V'afilu b'kama revovis ishtaushilus yeh hakov b'chinas ruchniyas. Ki im davki m'chinas asayvev hu ha'isavas hayesh she'ena mugda begeda agbola haruchnias davke. He said, why is it that we can make the Yisavas precisely from Seivev? Because he's not mugda lo begashmis v'lo beruchnias. Well, was it a taich? It's well known, a famous beer in Siddhas, that if you were to take in the oil which is shot to Istaushel, the Hainu Mamalakom, and you would be allowed to be Mistalshel, but there is Ileva Olu, ad ribi v'ravovis madregas, each level being a tzimtzum like every one. Previously, you would never get Yisavas Hagashmiyas. It's impossible. Because everything would remain in a form of ruchnias, and you can't go out of the Geda of a Dover Ruchni in order to get into a Dover Gashmi. There's a Nizayin, you can be Mishtalshel and Mitzamtzim, ad ribu madregas, ad ain't safe, Shabbakola ain't safe. And you would never get the Inyan from Gashmiyas. Favus, because there's a famous klal brought down in the Gemara that ain't chovush mater asatzmi mi beisa ashudim, that somebody's locked in a certain in and he can't get out. He needs a koyah beyond himself to take him out. And remember the scheme with the Inyan from the Oyer HaMishtalshel, but derech Ileva Olu, that's Mamale Kolam. And Mamale Kolam is already a Inyan from Ruchniyas, as opposed to anything which is the opposite of Ruchniyas. And if it couldn't be Mishtalshel into a Madrega for Gashmiyas, because it's all, even for Erech, it would just remain what it is, Hainu Ruchniyah. How can you get from Ruchniyas to Gashmiyas? Only alidei the koyach ha'atzmes, hu levadei b'koyach aviyah choilte. And where does that come from? It comes from the oil, but not the oil mamalikom. It comes from the oil ha'atzmi, which has got in itself mitziyusei miyat musei. Dafki that can be mahaviyah the Inyan from yesh mi miyai. But if is brought down the famous pier in Chassidus, that how is it that the Tana girl, how is it that the Tana girl Chatzos Laila Gita Gishrei calls out and gives a gewaldige Gishrei, and everybody realizes that it's Chatzos Laila. And then later on, just before Alois HaShachar, or after Alois HaShachar, it weiter Gita Gishrei, a Tana girl. You guys ever heard it? You guys talk about these things, but I don't know, you Americans, you ever have anything to do with Tana girls?
For Chabad there is.
I remember when I used to go out into the Shomron for Shabbos out into Tafuach out there. There was this guy, he had a big, huge, whacking great Tana girl. You know, he was something like David HaMelech, you know, they used the Tana girl to wake him up, you know. I don't know if you ever got up at Chatzos, but anyway, it's all of a sudden, you know, Mamish in the middle of the night, or not the middle of the night, Mamish Chatzos, you'd hear this tremendous, because it was quiet up there, Mamish, as if you can hear a pin drop, it's as a still, you know, out in the hills out there, and then all of a sudden, this gewaldige Gishrei, and you can take a look at your watch and you can see it was 11:35, there's man from Chatzos. Yeah, yeah. And my mother, so it says, why is the Tana girl come to the Indian from Chatzos? So it's written that the Indian from Chatzos, well, that's got a shive, says, hey, Gehulis, Bina, how the Nemshech, and the Malchus, the Atzilas, Chaisab Skor, Gewaldige. That's Indian from the Tana girl. Whatever he's he's a Baal Gehulis, the Tana girl, you know, he's a Shafer and a Bezer, as they say in Yiddish. And so all the way goes down through Ribui, Rubovis, Madregas, and Mishtalshul, and Dudes, and after, from that Oilam to them Oilam, and through that sphere to another sphere, and let's say, to Ribui, Rubovis, Mishtalshul. And so at the beginning of the whole Mishtalshul, Malchus Tatzilus gets from the Hey Gures, a being, as you might say, and that being goes all the way down to the Seder Stalshul, and the Tana girl, the matter, the nefesh of the Tana girl, what you might call the ruchnius of the Tana girl. However much ruchnius he has, but all upon him he's got. Yeah, in the ruchnius of the Tana girl, he hears only being, he hears that. Yeah, he hears that being. And at the far, something occurs in him. Of a mamish with his wings and with his gashmistic voice, he wouldn't be able to do anything if the Abish didn't create his body, yesh mina ayin. That creation of the body of the Tana girl, yesh mina ayin, well, that comes mamish be'arasevu chom, it's l'mayla me'atzilas, l'mayla me'hegvulas, l'mayla me'malvus. What do you want? That comes mamish from the koach ha'ayin. So, and once he's already got a goof, then that in the nefesh, which is koilet, the inyonim halayah, mitzad ishtalsus, the goof and the nefesh get together, and he gives a gashmistika gishrei. But the gashmistika gishrei comes mitzad the koach ha'ayin tzeif am tzeif kolam in mamish atma tzeif tzeif. Kacha mavur, v'kama drushei. Chassidus, that's the Indian, what the Rebbe says here. Mitzad the Indian from Mamale, what that's how the Abish has already been mitzamtzum, tzimtzumim, gemurim, achrei tzimtzumim, into a field where it's already Elikus versus Gashmi is, not Elikus and Gashmi are all the same thing. Elazeh called Afkamin Elazeh, because the Ruchnis is also only his harvest mimenu. No, the Indian from Ruchni is versus Gashmi. This is Mamale Kolami. And remember, you can never have a Yisavas Mitzah of Oilama Gashmi. The only way you can have the Yisavas of Oilama Gashmi, you have to go back to Ein Seif Mamish. And where's that? That's stuck in the era Seivev, in the era Achmi, which is Lamaila. Mikol Tzimtzumim, Lifnei Kol Tzimtzumim, those are the era Amiti, which is Koyacha, Achmis Matziosei Meyat, Musa, Itafki, that creates you the Yin of an Oilama Hagashmi. Oh, it'll be understood. The famous expression brought down on the Sefer Ikrim, that he says that Hisavas Hagashmiyas min Haruchniyas ein lacho yesh me'ayin godel mi As they state, the Sefer. So what does he mean by saying Yishavas HaGashmis ben HaRuchnias Ein lecho yesh mi'ayin godel mizeh? What yesh mi'ayin is yesh mi'ayin. What does it say? A big yesh mi'ayin, a small yesh mi'ayin. What does it say? Ein lecho yesh mi'ayin godel mizeh. Elam. What he means is that there are certain inyanim which are similar to yesh mi'ayin. There also are mi'ayin the yesh mi'ayin, and there in the madregas finished also as the ayin or the chokmah shebechol olam, or that's a kilo a chokmah mi'ayin timotzei, or that's a certain kfitza mi a madregas kilo yesh mina ayin of a sort, a very very big what you might call kfitzas madregas. Oh, that's all yesh mi'ayin. Now it is in the yin von Ruchnias, Kaviyachol, in the yin von Mamalagom. Oh, ein lecho yesh mi'ayin godel mizeh means the emasa hisavas or the gashmias miha'el akus. Well, that can only be mamish in the koyach ha'ein seisha matziyose miyat. That's what the Rebbe says here. That dafki that is in the oil, dafki that koyach, but not in the oil mitzadat musay. The oil mitzadat musay is like you might say in Yiddish gunisht. There's a gunisht. Oh, but how does it get in itself? The whole Inyan mitzad rutzoni is barak in the Inyan adveikis and mamela the Inyan from ma'ayin. Oh, but not that the oil itself is mitzadat ma'ayin. So, that says the Rebbe. Oh, that's what the Ramach would time. Yeah, so there we would say Kim Davki Mchin Sarah. Say who is Sabza Ejena Mukta Begeder Hakbola Ruchni Davki. It's not limited Davki in Ruchni. There Masha Ruchni is back Ashmish Shavin Lafonov. Now that's a lesson which also occurs in the early Chokrim or Mukubolim. They say Lagabi the immediate slamus of the Abish, there's Atzmas, Gashmi is Baruchni is Shavin. There's no such thing as Ruchnis being a greater miler than Gashmis, because as far as he's concerned, it's at the Shleimus Atzmas, it's all one and the same thing. And to a certain extent, the Ruchnis is also Yesh Mina Ayin. Because it also comes about through tremendous Tzimtzumim, B'derech Yesh Mi'ayin Mimenu Yisbarach. Everything is B'tachlis HaBitul Lefono. Im Kain Harehu B'chinas Ein Seiv. Therefore, that Inyan of the Seiv, the Gila, the Achmi, Min Achmi, oh, that's called Ein Seiv in the Taich Canal that we touched before. Shlilas Kola Atoyarim Ushleimus HaAchmis Hu Levade B'koychaviyah. What is it in von Ein Seiv? Pellet gesagt. He said, aber Kose ain't boy mitzadat me chas v'sholim. But all that's not in the oil on its own right. It's not that the oil has that in its own self. Ki im liyosei me'ein mekoiroi. Because of this wondrous Indian of me'ein mekoiroi, and that me'ein because of the rotzen of the atzmas in dveikid. There should be dovuk boy. Zeo shayisavas hu bekoyach o ein seif tavke. The Yisavas is not from the Ein Seif. It's in the koyach of the Ein Seif, which is nimta in the oil. And therefore the oil got in itself Ein Seif. But not that the oil is Ein Seif mitzat atzmai. Okay, Moshe diktik, Bigeres HaKodesh Anal B'Lashonoi HaTohaya. He said, like the Alter Rebbe is very careful to say in that famous Bigeres HaKodesh chapter 20, which we mentioned before, in his very pure Lashon. That's a way of saying in his golden pure Lashon. The Alter Rebbe is careful to say, and this is a quote, Ukidei She'iyeh Hayesh Hazeh Hanivro B'Koyach Ha'ein Seif. Yeah, in order that this koyach, that this yesh hanivra, and it'll kill almost in brackets through the koyach of the Ein Seif, ba'al gvul umida, that it should be limited and adequate gashmistic entity in the limitations of Bisman umakim nislabish oyer Ein Seif kulu. And he doesn't continue the quote because he just assumes that you probably know. But he writes over there that Nishlabish Oyer Ein Seif Bekelim de Atzila. He was Mislabish in the Kelim, because the Kelim are the Koyach HaGvul Sheba Ein Seif. And so you got the Koyach HaBligul and the Koyach HaGvul, the Blavachi Shneihem Shkulim, Lagabi the Atzmas, and he's Mislavish Zeba, but there Almanas, over the Etzemis Chavez comes about to the Ur Ha'ain Teiv Mami. That's what actually does. And the Kalim, they assist and they cause the union of the Hagbola Shabbat. That's the union of the Koyach HaBligo and the Koyach HaGvul. So to a certain extent, Kumtois, that in the Yesh HaGashmi, you've got everything. In the Yesh HaGashmi, you've got the Shleimus HaAtzmas, the Koyach HaBligo and the Koyach HaGvul, Gam Yachad. And that's what is put down. That the Emes Dugma of the Ein Sof, and if you want to see the Eivishter, then you should look at the Yesh HaGashmi. Davki in the Yesh HaGashmi, zet men the immediate Koyach HaEin Sof.
But it's still only coming from the Or, it's not...
Yeah, because it's coming from the Ur, but it's coming together with the Indian of the Koyach HaGvul, that's the Kalim. Now, you've got in the Yesh HaGashmi the shleimus of all the possibilities of the Atzmas. I know, Shlilus HaBligu, Shlilus HaGvul, Gam Yachad.
My question is that if you're turning the Or with the Koyach HaAtzmas, that's creating the Yeshvayim, so what? Turning the Or, it's not the Atzmas.
No, what he says is Koyach HaAtzmas. In the Yesh, you see the Koyach of the Atzmas. And to a certain extent, you see the Atzmas more than what you do in the Ur. Because the Ur is only a medium to bring about that Indian of the Etzem Hu Levadei B'Koyach of Yechel. You follow? In other words, the Ur is only just a medium to reveal that power of the Atzmas. Those in Yonim not in the Ur mitzad Atzmas. So the Atzmas remains Mudal. It's his Koyach Hu Levadei B'Koyach. It's only him.
How can we say that there's a Koyach to Atmos when at the top of the page it says Afloi B'Chinas Koyach? At the top of the page it says Afloi B'Chinas Koyach, referring to Atmos in...
No. We pointed out already, we made clear that over there we meant Koyach in the form of potential. But when we say here Koyach, we mean the Etzem ability, the Etzem, how do you call it, Shleimus of the Ein Sof. Koyach Ein Sof. I mean, I pointed out carefully that when we use here in this whole context here, we mean the ability, the etzem shleimus of the Ein Sof is the word koyach. Over there he meant koyach in the form of potential versus poel. Yeah, that's what we said last night.
I don't understand the difference between ability and potential. Is that the two words you said, ability and potential?
That's what we said. Ability means when it's already acting. Yeah,
okay.
That's poel. Koyach is potential before it actually acts. So what he said in the beginning up there was that that doesn't exist in Elokus. There's no koyach and then afterwards poel. Over here when we mean koyach ha'atzmas, we mean the shleimus of the atzmas. You follow?
Why can't the atzmus do it? Why does it need the or? Why?
That is a very good question. So we more or less said that we're not going into that right now. Yeah, thanks. But Ein Chanami, that's a very good shaila. Why do we have to say? Why don't we say that the whole koyach goes through the atzmas himself? Why do you need the ha'ora, which we call the oya? Why do you need that? So the truth is that we're going to mention mi'ain, mizeh, in another few lines. So maybe to avoid, a lot of what you might call ad-libbing, then we'll sort of wait till we get there. However, suffice it to say that we don't ever want, for all sorts of reasons, to involve the atzmas directly in anything. The atzmas is directly involved by Ezer Shudora, because if you do, then ultimately speaking, you're going to say that mamish legabi atzmusai, mamish legabi the atzmus, there's something that wasn't there before. There's some sort of relationship or some sort of tefisas mokim that could be even made legabi him. You follow? Albeit in a very distant way, but ultimately you might be able to time it that way.
Like a shinoi?
Yeah. And therefore, for example, when we say the emesa actus of the Eibishter is that nothing really happened, nothing really came about. The hu levadei hu, and that's what we say, atu achelo nivra achelo minua, you say it in davening. So, I mean, how can you say that? I mean, all the Olamas came about. Let's not talk about the Ispilus part right now. The Ispilus is also a Inyan, but we're not talking about that. Let's just say that in the concept of Achdus B'Yichud, what the Alter Rebbe is talking about that over there in Tanya, in that concept of Achdus B'Yichud, how can you possibly say, like Gabi Diamitius Atzmas, that nothing came about? You follow? But that's what the Alter Rebbe says over there in chapter 20. But if you say the whole Hisavis came about from something which has absolutely no reference and it has no tfisus mochim like over him at all. It's Melchatchila, something that he has Melchatchila record with it. It has no place. Therefore, all these things fall away. You understand? And that's why it's for that reason. I mean, that's the basic reason. And that's why we are very careful to avoid, and all the Mekubalim are masking about. Everybody is masking about. All the Raman, the Ramak, and everybody, the Mekubalim, Rishonim, Achreinim, all the are masking at that point. So that's enough for the moment. All right, so therefore, this is really tough going. But you have to realize that it's an amazing thing, you know. It's an unbelievable Ashgacha Pratis. Somebody called me up on the phone not long before I came on, all told me to mine, and he called me up and he said, you know, I was looking up in the Sefer the other night, and I was with my friend, and we learn sometimes of Chavrusa, we're trying to work out this Ein Sof business. I would say about an hour ago, he called me up on the phone. He said, what do you say about this Ein Sof, Rav Gafni? What's in the title? So I said, listen, you don't need me. I said, you don't need to look it up in a book. It's Mavur in the Hamish of Samavor. Just look up in that mind. I quoted him out my. I said, learn it patiently and then come back to what we were talking about. In other words, this is one of the central documents in the Siddur Chabad for this whole thing. So if you can only sweat your way through this, you'll get all sorts of Inonim. I promise you, later on in life, they'll help you a lot. And that's why I'm going out of our way that we sit every 3 times a week together as a group of us, and we have the Koch HaRabim. There's at least a million overseer. You'll see that there's, and Mamish, you see, it's our mass. A younger man, he's already got an Einiko, he's already got 1 grandchild. And he called him and he said, I've never really worked out this sin of an Ein Sof. And he said, my Chavrusa and I, he said, we were looking it up in our Sefer that night where he talks about, and he gives Mari Makim. I said, what do you need to look up Mari Makim? I said, learn some about it, them, Maima, you remember. You don't think that's what's called? Pratis. Anyway, so, says the Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe is very, very medactic to say, B'Lashoinei HaTorah, that the Yesh HaNivra comes about b'koyach ha'Ein Sof, in the power of the Ein Sof, which was put into the Oyer. And therefore the Oyer, it's the secret, and the Oyer is then mislavish in the Kalim, and the two come together to produce the Etzem Yesh HaGashmi. וזהו שאר המחז"ל ימוין לו עם השם אין סוף על דבר מסובב ונמשך ממנו יסברה. He said, and that's what the Ramak is very careful, and he will refuse. Yima'in means he will refuse. He will refuse to agree to call the name Ein Sof on a thing which is only mesuvav v'nimshak mimenu yisbara, on something which is only come about from, it's been brought about and derived from him. The Ramak will not want to use the name Ein Sof. In other words, the word Ein Sof with all of those shleimas that we said before, the shlilas, kol ha'toyarim, his only boy is Bara. The Oyer, he said, the Oyer is not mitzad atzmei. The Oyer is God in it only because of mi'ayin hamoyer. It's only because it's like him anyway. That's why it's got it. But not that it has it mitzad atzmei. יש להם הכוונה על בחינס האויר בכלל ובחינס האויר הנצלים בפרט. He said, יש להם, that what is he coming to cancel out is the Indian from the Oyer. In other words, that you shouldn't think that the Oyer doesn't have the Koyach HaEin Sof, but it's only got the Koyach HaEin Sof, the ability, the shleimus, but not that it's really got it mitzad Moi, and therefore he doesn't want to say the word Ein Sof. Ein Sof means that you got it yourself. And he said, you can only say that about the Eibishter. That he's got all these things himself. That's only mitzad the Eibishter. But he said, even in the Oiluis HaNetzolim, or Befrat, Be'er is Bechlal, Befrat, Oir in general meaning the Oir HaSeivev, and the Inif HaNeres HaNetzolim, the Inif HaMamalei, or B'derech Klau, Hu B'chinas Seivev Uma Malei. Ki im B'chinas Atzmus Mamish, Hu B'chinas Ein Sof Amiti Kanal. He's the Shlilas Kola Toyarim, and he negates all possible descriptions, etc., etc., and that's only in him. And in the Oyer you can't possibly say that it's Ein Sof. It's got the koyach of the Ein Sof, but not that it is mitzad atzmei Ein Sof. Ki. Now we go back, so that's like a pause. And now we go back to the Mukubalim Hari Shoinim, that they wanted to say that there was a thing called Keser, and they wanted to say that the Keser was Ein Sof. Yeah? Or the Ramah Mipano, he wanted to say that the Rotzen was Ein Sof. So now we're going to see that the Rebbe is going to deal with that in the light of these unbelievable Giluim that we've made in the concept of Ein Sof. How does that fit in with them? How do they relate to all this? And we're going to see that Sof Kosof, there's a difficulty in their position. Albeit, it's a very carefully worked out position, but we're going to see there's a slight difficulty with the Ramak, even though he's got his own difficulties, but the Ramak avoids that, and we'll see that the Alter Rebbe is sort of with the principle he just put forward in the Oyer, the Alter Rebbe, as it were, avoids both that and both that. Ki hine kol ma shenitchachu hamukubalim harishonim. He said, all that with the early Mukubalim, what that means, the Mukubalim prior to the Ramak, and particularly prior to the Arizal, many names that we could mention, but the Mukubalim are Rishonim, that what they were nidchak. Now the word nidchak, in the Russian learning, when you say somebody was nidchak to say such and such a svara, it means he said a good thing, but it's a bit of a push, it's a little bit pushy, it's not, ultimately supportable from all sides. So therefore he said, that's what the Mukubalim were nidchak a bit, to say, Sha'keser nikra gam kein Ein Sof, that they said that the Keser is called Ein Sof. V'chein harama mipano, shepirash sha'rotzen nikra Ein Sof. Hu rak kidei lefarish, eik ani havai Eloisha, Nisi, she'ein shum shinoi boyes barach, v'shum ispailas alidei briasa. He said the whole reason why they said that is that they wanted to avoid these kashas that we mentioned earlier, that there shouldn't be any involvement of the Atzmus in the actual Bria. And since they wanted to avoid that, therefore they came up with a medium like in between. And they called it either the Keser or the Rotz. So the Rebbe said they've got a good point. Telechoyre ain't a moving klal eich lo yeh shum shinui mibrias eilames rabim vatzumim mi. The Rebbe says, "Taka, a tremendous kasha. How do you say that they came about all these eilames and they don't cause any change whatsoever? V'yadua dishabes yehu bekoyecho ein seif davka." Shehu levadoi davke bekoicha v'yachol teilahavas mi'ayin le. Everybody agrees about that. That's what the Alter Rebbe wrote. That's the lesson of the Alter Rebbe. But everybody agrees on that point, that ultimately to bring about the Etzem Misavas was only the koich of the Eibishter Mamish, Biatz Musay. If that's the case, only he can produce the actual Ilamas, then Im Kain, how do you say that he has absolutely no relationship to them and they have no reference to him whatsoever? If only he could do it. If only he could do it, then he must some way relate to them. V'im Kain eich lo shonisi klal. As the child said, there was absolutely no change whatsoever. V'lachin pirshu, or therefore the Mekubalim Rishonim and the Ramah Mipano, they said she'ashpa ba'elamas. What does that mean? Hainu lahabis ba'elamas ulehachiyos esoim. Hainu, to bring them about, and then afterwards continually renew them. Lahabis means to create or to bring about. Lahachiyos means to give life to something that's already been created. Im shehu koyach ayin seif mamish lachadish me'ayin leyesh. They agree that bavadai, that's only the shleimus of the Atzmus himself, that he can do that to bring about me'ayin leyesh. Ein ze oisi his pilus be'atzmus ha boirei. It doesn't cause any, what you might call, effect or reaction in the very essence of the boirei. Why? It's only through a medium that was nimshach from him, not from him. Alidei harotzen, or hakeser lefi divrei Mekubalim Rishonim. Because the Ramah, as we said, he was much later. He was already after the Arizal, the truth is. He was from the Talmidim of the Arizal. Or he said hakeser lefi divrei Mekubalim Rishonim. Shebechinas rotzen zeh hu ain't safe mamish. Meaning also by the Mekubalim Rishonim, the Inyan of the Keser, or they hold that is ain't safe mamish. Now notice the word mamish. V'ainu de ladaitom arotzen oya Keser hu bechinas ain't safe mamish mitad atzmai. In other words, the Alter Rebbe says that the oil has got itself the koyach of the Ein Seif lahavish yesh mi aye. But the oil itself is a dover shenimshuk mimeno, and it's a masuva b'loshen haramak, a masuva mimeno, and mamela aim is a guni. The oil itself is harabi. How much is it called Inyan? It's got the Inyan from lahavish yesh mi aye, because the Ein Seif puts himself into it. Oh, they want to say no. They want to say that the Keser or the Rotzen is ain't safe mitadat. It's got all the inyonim of the Eibishter in it mitad atmoi. Not that it was just mitad the Devekas or the Inyan from Me'ain Makoyah. So that's going to promote a difficulty. How can you possibly say that something which is mamish agiloi from the Eibishter, it's not mamish him, should have all the perfection that he had? In other words, it's not him, but it's got everything that it would want from him in it. Mainly according to the Alter Rebbe, where it's nothing but he put it in it and he sort of holds it in there. It's only because he's shofeya that into it. Yeah. Otherwise, you got something which mitzad atzmoi has got it. It's killed like a inyan atzmoi in its own right. Then how can you define a thing of that nature? So the Rebbe tries with a biur, and he says, maybe he said hainu. That means to say, teladaitom arotzen kesu b'chinas ein torah ki heim meforshim ma'ashakosu b'pilchet Rabbi Eliezer, like we saw that prior to Nivra ha'olam ha'yehu u'shmoi bil v'ad, or earlier we quoted that. And so they said shmoi hainu b'chinas ha'rotzen, that the inyan from shmoi, the Ramah will teach it the inyan from rotzen. Why? He said v'chein shmoi b'gematria rotzen. Try it out and you'll see. Shmoi and Rotzen are the same gematria. Meaning, until the Tzimtzum Harishon or the Inyan from Atzilas, Shmoi, there was him and his name, meaning his Rotzen, Levad, purely on there. Hari Shmoi Kadmain Kidkat Musa years, but he said, over they come to age that there's a level of something which is only a Gilu Menu. It's not him, but it's got in itself Mitzad Atzmai in its own essence. Well, that's what he's got. Dainu, he is Kadmain, so that's also Kadmain. In other words, that's primordial, Ein Loi Tchila, also the Inyan from Rotzen has in itself that Inyan. So that's immediately going to lead us to a problem. But However, before we get immediately to the problem, Avedis HaKodesh, now the Avedis HaKodesh is a very early Mukubal, but we'd already told you he wrote the famous Sefer Avedis HaKodesh, and he's called the Rabbi Meir Ibn Gabbai. That's just his name. He was very early, he was in the time almost of the Rishonim, very, very early. Avedis HaKodesh Chelik Aleph Reish Perek Beis Hevi B'Shem Biur Seidus Ramban Zal. Now the Ramban is one on it. He was a great Rishon. He was the Arizal said that all the Kabbalah Amitiyas was nimshach through the Ramban. Now the truth of the matter is that the Ramban wrote a sefer. Well, I'm not sure if he actually wrote it, but Al Chaponim is like a collection of Seidus of the Ramban, and it's called Shushan Seidus. It's a very interesting name. Some such name like that. So apparently that's what the Avedis HaKodesh is referring to. He's apparently referring to that Sefer which brings in the name of the Ramban all sorts of inyonim b'derech hasod v'Kabbalah. So he says in the name of the Ramban Zal, Sha'keser kadmoin kekadmos ein, say, keser kadmoin kekadmoin ein, say. V'im yoyse ol min ha'atzmas, Mekomochim daitim shu kadman kikadmusi yisborach. So immediately, the intelligent reader is hit with this tremendous question mark. How can you say that? How can you say something was ol mimenu? It came about from him. In other words, that the Atzmos produced it, and yet nonetheless it's kadman kikadmusi yisborach. Now we're going to see later the Alter Rebbe also does a trick like that. But the Alter Rebbe does it in a much different way. And here, the Echel Taining, the Ein HaChanam, the Eibusha gave this forth from himself. So if he gave it forth from himself, Yesh L'zeh Tchila. If Yesh L'zeh Tchila, how can you say it's Kadmen Ke? Kadmusa Yizbara. But Tzodik Lema, the Rebbe immediately knows that you're bothered with that. He knows that you're already shaking with that kashia. V'tzodik loyma dahainu mishum sheloi hoyas man sheloi yiyeh harotzen. Now I really asked you to choose that one. So the Rebbe said, what does it mean? So we have to say, according to them, that there wasn't any time that there wasn't the rotzen. Oh, but you just said that it was all mimenu yisborach. If it's all mimenu yisborach, then there must have been some point where it wasn't. So how can you jump on both chasnas? How can you say, oh no, there was no time, there was never, but it's all mimenu. And the fact there was no time there was ever as kadmin kikad musa. Oh, it's all mimenu. It's only di ain't safe. It's not. So there was a derivative. He said that is what they hold. Charotzen, oi hakeser, hu b'chinas ain't safe. And therefore they hold that they've got all these miles that we saw in the word ain't safe. Mitzad atzmam, in their own self, not like the earth, but in their own self they have it. Al Yodom Ru'ais Havis, and therefore they can be through them days Havis, because they're mamish like the Abish, so they have the power of Metziusi Matmuzilla Havis Yesh Miyah. Ramak Choylek al Zeh. He said, but the Ramak differs with that. The Ramak doesn't want to say anything like that. V'oyim she'ein litin kadmus l'shum dover animtu mimenu ki'im elo yizborach levad. Kadmus you can't give to anything, only to him. So the Rebbe said, "V'chein hu emes." He said, "Chein hu behemes." I say this behemes. And I said, "You wish what the kivolta with these mukabola v'rashenim." L'chera tzorikim. Was it this? How do they time that it's kadmin kekadmusu yizbora, but isa rega what you say all mimenu, and the Rebbe puts in brackets. A teretz, because he knows that obviously the kasha is going to jump and eat you. And everybody said, Mishum shaloi hoyas man shaloi. What type shaloi man? We're not talking about man in these madrigas. I mean, it's not shayach man. Cloud. What do you mean shaloi hoyas man shaloi hoyo? He means that it was always like that. Kilo, it's cadmium. How can you say cadmium kadmutzi is boga if you say there was olol me? Olol me man. And that's what he said. He said the Ramak who didn't like that is right. I mean, what did these great peoples, what did they think? So if I was really going to be cruel, I had to say good night, guys. Have a good evening, and I would leave you all asleep with the Kanshin. And the only trouble is that you probably disturb your sleep so badly that there'll be problems with Seder tomorrow. I can't very well do it. And there's problems anyway. But so we have to say like this. We have to say that they would tie actually nivro ha'olam hoyahu shmei bilvad. What are the ties? Why does it have to say actually nivro ha'olam hoyahu shmei bil? Somewhere or another you're already getting into the gather of olam and the gather hadasman. You're just saying actually nivro ha'olam hoyahu shmei bil. Just say. Yeah, who kadmin v'shmoi kadmin. Just say, who shmoi nitzchis kamoyu, or something like that. Why did you say actually nivro oil moyu shmoi? So when you're saying who shmoi is the same thing, you're saying in a certain way that you're talking about the madrega, but not necessarily about the etzem yachas of it in zman kaviolo to the atzman. And therefore he said we're only saying in reference to the whole state of oilam that this is kadmin. And why is it called kadmin kemoise? Because mitzad the pshitas of the Dora and the Abdullah from Kol HaToyarim, then it's like as if it's also Malamayla from the Torah has man. But ain't no chanami, it's all me. It's all mimeno. And therefore they want to, as it were, jump on both chasnas, because the Lashon of the Pirchei the Rebbe Eliezer puts it in some way or another in reference to Nivro Ha'olam. Ad Kedikah. And why is it called Kadmon? Because it has absolutely no reference to the Etzem Meisav's Bentayim. It's completely and utterly Mutal Mizeh. Pink to say with the Atzim is a Mutal. In that prat it's called Kadmon. But ain't no chanami nish Kadmon Kadmon Ha'amiti. And if I come again, Al Chapon Ba'amiti is a Kadmon. Comes again the Ramach and he said, what do you need that for? B'shvuma tzarich et kol ha'adir. The kadmin, forget it. As far as kadmin is concerned, ein oil al adas beneged to the atmos anything to do with the Indian from kadmin. I feel b'derech dimion or I feel b'derech closeness. Now that is a Indian which is only shomer le'atmos. Ain't safe. Okay, ain't safe is only shot to him. Forget it. Beneged to shum dova acher, and the Alter Rebbe agrees with that 100%. We'll see as we go on in the coming year that the Alter Rebbe also agrees with that, and the Alter Rebbe holds that in the Chanami, kadmin and all those inyanim, I feel that ain't safe is not in anything only here. But that what the oil has got, that's only that the Eibishter puts into the but the Nasina, Beratzoy Noihu, the Veikis, boy, it can have the Indian of who Lavade Bekoche Viachel Te Lahavs Yesh Me'ain Vevza Amuklat, or not Mitzadatme. It doesn't good. So have a good night, General.